He thought he could move on. For a moment he believed that time would erase the invisible marks you left on him. But what is time, if not a hollow movement when the heart remains tethered to a moment that never passes? He realized it wasn't that simple, because it's not just about the absence of a person, it's about the absence of a gaze that sustained his own. The silence that used to be filled with a voice that calmed his mind. The empty space in the bed, which has become a chasm greater than any physical distance. He believed routine would bring distraction, that new tasks, new faces, new places would be enough to drown out the pain. But with every step, every corner, every moment of solitude, he felt his world fragmenting. Not because he wanted to live in the past, but because the present without you has lost its color. Have you ever noticed how absence can weigh more than presence? He noticed it. His body keeps moving. He works, replies to messages, forces smiles, tries to appear strong. But inside, a whole piece of him remains frozen at the moment you left. And the cruelest part is that no one notices. No one sees how he is crumbling inside. To others, he seems just like anyone else going about life normally. But you know, and he knows too, that nothing is normal when the absence becomes unbearable. He tried to hide it, tried to convince himself that he was okay, but the truth always finds a way to emerge, through his tired eyes, through thoughts that insist on returning to you, through sleepless nights where he talks to memories as if they were real, and there's something that hurts even more. He can't hate you, can't erase you, can't let go, because absence is not just made of what is missing, but also of what remains too alive inside him. You might not realize the intensity of this silent battle, or maybe you do, and that's why you feel the weight of these words now. But the reality is this: he's not just missing you. He's slowly unraveling, as if your absence were a slow poison, eroding him without haste. He thought he could rebuild himself, but he soon realized that reconstruction requires a solid foundation, and all his foundations were with you. Not just in love, but in the way you made his world meaningful. Now he walks among people yet feels invisible. He breathes, but doesn't truly feel the air filling his lungs. He smiles, but knows that the smile doesn't come from within. Have you ever been through something like this? Believing you could start over, only to suddenly realize that the emptiness is bigger than any plan? If this has happened to you, comment, "I needed to hear this," because that's exactly what he's going through. A secret battle, a silent desert, a life that appears intact on the outside, but is shattered on the inside. And the longer time passes, the more he understands that it's not about overcoming. It's about learning to live with the absence, trying to find a way to breathe within the empty space you left behind. But he still hasn't figured out how, and that's why each day feels like a heavier weight than the last. He doesn't want to admit it, but he feels like he's losing himself. Not because he's weak, but because real love doesn't just disappear, it transforms into absence. And absence, when it's too overwhelming, can silently destroy even the most resilient soul. He believed that absence would just be a silence, a void, an interval that would become bearable over time. But he discovered that it's not the emptiness itself that destroys, it's how that emptiness echoes in every detail of everyday life. He wakes up and realizes that the body rises, but the soul does not follow. He opens his eyes but doesn't find the light that used to reflect in the eyes of someone who is no longer there. He gets out of bed, but feels that he has left behind the only reason that drove him forward. This is the kind of pain that isn't visible from the outside. There's no blood, no visible wound. But internally he bleeds every day, and no one notices. No one understands the intensity of this silent collapse. His life has turned into a routine of disguises. He wears the mask of normalcy. He talks about mundane topics. He fulfills responsibilities. He smiles at social gatherings. But the weight he carries in his heart never dissipates. There are nights when he lies down trying to convince his mind that it's all over, that everything has come to an end, that the chapter has closed. But the soul doesn't take orders. The soul doesn't understand forced goodbyes. The soul continues to call for what completed it. And in the silence he realizes you were not just a presence. You became a structural part of who he is. And when a structural part is torn away, it doesn't just leave a void, it leaves a collapse, it leaves instability. It leaves a life that can no longer sustain itself. He thought new faces might provide a distraction, thought new meetings, new conversations, new hugs would be enough to fill the gap. But he discovered that there is no possible replacement when it comes to something that was essential. Because the absence is not just of the person, it is of the unique, irreplaceable connection that existed between you. And perhaps the cruelest part is realizing that, even without you, everything around him reminds him of you. The song that plays without warning, the scent that appears in some unexpected place, the forgotten object in a drawer, the gesture of someone who for a second mimics the way you used to speak. He doesn't escape these memories, but they bring no comfort. They bring a raw pain, because they are fragments that reinforce the awareness that you are not here. His absence is destruction, because it is not limited to specific moments. It infiltrates every second. At work, when he loses focus and realizes that his mind is somewhere else. On the street, when he sees couples and feels his heart tighten. In the mirror, when he recognizes a vacant look that didn't exist before. He realized that absence has become a constant ghost. And the problem with a ghost isn't the strength of its appearance, it's the fact that it never fully disappears. He fights against it. He tries to strengthen himself. He tries to convince himself that he needs to move on. But how can he move on when each step has become too heavy? How can he move on when with every attempt he feels the ground vanish beneath his feet? And it's not a lack of strength, it's not incapacity. It's that the pain of absence isn't rational. It doesn't follow logic. It doesn't respect plans. It simply exists and consumes. He tried to fill the silence with noise, to turn on the TV, to listen to random music, to throw himself into shallow conversations. But he realized that no sound is enough to silence the echo of his absence. And that echo doesn't let him find peace, because it's not just a neutral emptiness, it's an emptiness that accuses, that constantly reminds him of what was lost, that reinforces the notion that nothing else compares. Have you ever felt this? This kind of pain that doesn't scream but consumes in silence? If so, write in the comments, I know what it's like, because he is right there, in an invisible battlefield, waging wars that no one sees, winning one day only to lose the next, rebuilding a little only to crumble again. He thought time would help him, but he discovered that time doesn't heal when there's an absence that was never filled. Time merely heightens the awareness that there's no going back. And that awareness is more painful than the memory itself. Sometimes he asks himself, do you feel the same way? And that question finds no answer, but it eats away at him. Because if you've moved on, if you feel nothing anymore, then his pain seems even more cruel. It's as if he were condemned to carry a weight that originated from something that was once shared. He doesn't seek pity. He doesn't seek superficial comfort. What he seeks is simply understanding. He wants someone to grasp the depth of this emptiness. He wants someone to understand that it's not an exaggeration, it's not drama, it's survival amidst the collapse. He recalls little details that have now become unbearable, the way you pronounced certain words, the way you averted your gaze when you laughed, the simplicity of sharing silence without needing an explanation. These memories, which should be sweet, have turned into invisible blades. Each recollection cuts a little deeper, and with every cut, he feels himself fragmenting even more. How long will it be possible to endure? How long can the heart hold on? He knows he needs to find a way, but he hasn't found it yet. And that's why, while the world sees him living, inside he feels that he is dying. He believed he could bury the pain, hide it away in a corner, like someone who closes a drawer and throws the key away. But he realized that absence won't let itself be locked away. It crosses doors, it goes through walls, it breaks through any effort to contain it. His body still moves, but his soul remains frozen in that moment when everything crumbled. He tries to convince himself that it's all past, but every daily gesture brings back what has never left. Absence is not a mere episode. Absence is a state, and this state has already become part of him. There are days when he wakes up with a false sense of lightness, as if, for a second, his mind believed that you were still there. But it only takes opening his eyes, looking around, and reality strikes him once again. You are not here, and that changes everything. He confesses to no one, but the loneliness is deeper than it appears. It's not just about being alone in a room. It's the feeling of being alone even when surrounded by people, because no one can replace what has been lost. No one fills the specific void you left behind. He tried to find meaning in new experiences, travel, conversations, plans, but he realized that everything feels incomplete. Everything seems smaller, duller, and lacking purpose. And the most painful part is that he doesn't allow himself to forget. because forgetting would be like dying twice, killing the memory of you and killing the part of him that still insists on loving. So he clings to the memory even if it destroys him. It's a cruel paradox, keeping alive what consumes him, because the alternative would be even worse. Absence is treacherous. It's not a constant scream. It's a whisper that appears in the most unexpected moments, in the smell of coffee in the morning, in the evening light that reminds him of shared afternoons, in the automatic gesture of picking up his phone and nearly typing a message that will never be sent. He has asked himself many times, why can't I move on? And the answer never comes clearly. Maybe because moving on is an illusion. It's not about advancing. It's about dragging oneself with the weight of something that won't disappear. Do you know what it's like to live with the feeling of always being incomplete? He knows, he feels it every second, with every breath, with every prolonged silence. He believed that love could be overcome by reason, that willpower was enough to rebuild himself. But he discovered that the heart doesn't bend to logical commands. The heart is wild. It insists. It calls. It doesn't surrender. And that's when absence becomes destruction, when the heart remains tied to what life can no longer provide. He tries to appear strong, not out of pride, but because he can't bear the thought of worrying others. So, he carries the weight himself, swallows tears, fakes smiles, and this daily charade wears him out more than any physical effort. The exhaustion isn't from the body, it's from the soul, and no one notices. No one sees that he's on the brink. Maybe you think time helps, but time, in his case, has not brought healing. He brought only layers of silence over the same open wound, and the wound is still there, throbbing, reminding, corroding. He no longer knows how to describe it. Sometimes words fail to translate what he feels. It's a mix of emptiness with weight, of silence with internal noise, of a desire to forget mixed with a fear of losing even the memory. He realized that absence has transformed him. He is not the same anymore. His gaze has changed. His voice carries a different tone. His gestures have become slower, as if each movement were too heavy. And this transformation is not temporary. It's a definitive mark. Because when someone who has become essential disappears, there's no going back to who you were before. He knows this, and no matter how hard he tries, he cannot fully accept it. Have you ever felt unrecognizable to yourself? Have you ever looked in the mirror and realized that you don't recognize what you see? If so, comment, "That has happened to me," because that's exactly how he feels, a strangeness towards himself, an internal emptiness that has now become his identity. He believed he could reinvent himself, that he could build new foundations. But he realized that reconstruction requires foundations, and all the foundations were in you. Now he walks on ruins, and no matter how hard he tries to build something new, the ruins remain visible, constantly reminding him of what has been lost. This is the destruction that no one sees, the collapse that happens in silence, without an audience, without witnesses. Every night he fights invisible battles, and every morning he rises as if nothing had happened. But you know, he knows. The absence is still there, intact, firm, persistent. And maybe what's cruelest is this: no matter how much time passes, no matter what he does, the absence does not diminish. It just changes form. Sometimes it's a deep emptiness. Sometimes it's a suffocating pressure. Sometimes it's a silent scream within his chest. But it's always there. And this constancy is what destroys him the most. There's no pause. There's no rest. There's no truce. He believed that he could adapt, but he realized that certain absences don't allow for adaptation. They become part of one's identity. And identity, once marked, can never return to what it was. He doesn't just live without you, he lives with your absence. And that changes everything. If this resonated with you, the next video will go even deeper. Click and continue with me.